Hi everyone, just a quick call of action to everyone. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please make sure you subscribe and click on the notification bell icon to make sure you don't miss anything coming up on the channel, including guests, live stream watch-alongs. If you like this guest video, make sure you smash that like button so it really helps the algorithm and get this show going on all platforms. Hope you enjoyed today's video. It's that time again where in the RBL talk segment I will introduce a special guest for the show. You can see them there if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you're just listening, make sure that you can click the link in the show notes to go and watch this for free over on YouTube. Welcome to the show.
Hi Justin, how's it going?
Yeah, very good, thank you Josh. So please introduce yourself to the listeners and the viewers.
So I'm Josh Sexton. I am the editor of the Anfield Wrap, which is a podcast and video streaming service for Liverpool fans.
How did you come about supporting Liverpool Football Club yourself?
So my dad's from Liverpool, so it was sort of it was drummed into me from a very young age. I was quite resistant to it at first. We live in a place called Cheshire, for anybody who knows England very well, which is sort of in between Liverpool and Manchester. And a lot of my friends were Manchester United fans, so I had them sort of trying to put some pressure on my dad, trying to put some pressure on. And so me, in the middle of that, just decided that I didn't really want to like football at all at first, and was more of a World Wrestling Federation fan. But eventually my dad's pressure won over.
Well, personally, I think you picked the right one. Probably just ticked off a lot of Man U fans, but oh well.
No, I agree. I definitely picked the right one.
So, have you always been a supporter of Liverpool Football Club once you picked a club, or?
Yeah, so I always say I'm a lifelong fan. The proper love affair probably started when I was about maybe 8 years old, I want to say, which would have been around the time Gerard Houllier was manager. And then the first sort of proper season, I remember I was born in 1995, so the first sort of proper season I remember of watching them religiously was the first season of Rafa Benitez. So since those days I've been a massive Red.
Good to hear. So, before we get into the preview of the upcoming Champions League game, I want to just find out who your club's manager is. As you know, we've taken Jurgen Klopp. First of all, what's your view on that?
I'm probably not as burnt by it as some Mainz and Dortmund fans are. I think the Red Bull project has a very sort of different lens on it when you move into the Bundesliga picture. I think over here we sort of feel like we've got bigger fish to fry with the Manchester Cities and Newcastles of the world, and there's not a Red Bull project in England yet, so it probably doesn't feel as close to home in the way that it does for Mainz and Dortmund fans. So I think we're probably just pleased that Jurgen Klopp has managed to find something else that he's passionate about, something that doesn't feel as intense as managing Liverpool Football Club clearly did for him. So yeah, we're probably more indifferent to it than I would say a sort of large portion of his old club fans are.
If he came to manage RB Leipzig, would that maybe have changed your perspective or anything like that? Or after basically saying that he was too tired and you didn't want to manage on the touchline anymore, or would you still be the same way?
I think it would probably change my perspective in the sense that it would make those reasons for leaving Liverpool seem a little bit more like there was maybe some smoke and mirrors going on there. It wouldn't change my perspective on him as a man by any stretch of the imagination. It would just change my perspective on basically the words he'd said, really, which I think we all know in modern football. And like, so I host a show on the Anfield Wrap where I basically have to watch every Jurgen Klopp press conference and react to it. So I know he is a man who can do smoke and mirrors and who can just say some things sometimes to either get a message out to supporters or journalists or whatever. So it wouldn't change my view of the man. I think he's an incredible human being, an incredible football manager, and he did so much for Liverpool Football Club in the 8 to 9 years that he was here. So there's very little football wise I should emphasise that he can do that would change my perspective on him.
I do agree with that. It seems to be more Mainz and Borussia Dortmund supporters or fans that have basically said that they've changed their view on him, and they don't respect him or like him anymore, which for me is ludicrous. Like, at the end of the day, like, you can't just disrespect someone, or not like have any respect for someone, I should say, just because your choice of employer, so to speak. I mean, a lot of employees or employers around the world, their companies may do things that are questionable at times, but like, you're going to judge the person just for the person who pays them at the end of the day. it's one of those things where I just think it's a bit silly.
I understand it to an extent from their perspective, and like I will never sort of talk somebody down from a principled stance. Like Jurgen Klopp is somebody who held many principled stances during his time at Liverpool, and sometimes that would lead to him being called a hypocrite because of some things that he'd call out, even if it wasn't sort of inside football things he'd call out socially and politically and things like that, and other things that he'd turn a blind eye to. I think ultimately, like the thing I probably always come back to is that everyone's just trying to do their best, and that's where I have some sympathy with Jurgen Klopp, and where I have some sympathy with Mainz and Dortmund fans as well. I can understand sort of both sides of the coin there, really.
Yeah, myself, absolutely. So going into your current manager, it's Arne Slot. Is that correct? Is it said correctly as well? The Dutchman?
I think he always tries to correct it to be Arne rather than Arnie, because that's the natural thing that we went to as Liverpool fans, and particularly Scousers.
So he's just been appointed around June 2024. In my preview by myself leading up to this, I did say how well he's done already in the Premier League. I think my recording did include the Chelsea game, even though I just started my recording just before that. You guys are still top of the Premier League table, still 1 point in front of arch rivals and oil club money, Manchester City. So what's he like? What's his style of play? How is he as a person? What's his press conferences like?
It's an interesting one, really, because he's very, very different in terms of personality style to Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen was our sort of spiritual leader. He was it felt like the whole Jurgen Klopp time at Liverpool was built on emotion, really. He played into the emotion of the players, he played into the emotion of the fans. He made football as a spectacle feel like this uber emotional experience that every time you go to Anfield, it honestly felt like you were making like a pilgrimage, because you knew that you were basically going to go through 90 minutes of utter turbulence of whether it was Liverpool, racing out to huge leads, whether it was Liverpool going behind and finding a way to come back. If it was, high scoring draws, sometimes high scoring losses, although we rarely saw many of them at Anfield, luckily enough. He made it feel like you were always very much alive watching the football. Slot is much more about control. I think Jurgen Klopp thrived in that sort of element of chaos, and he knew that if we could drag other teams down to our level into that chaos, then we'd find it easy to beat them. Whereas I think Slot is less so intent on dragging teams down. He's almost more the way I compared it. I wrote something about this after the Chelsea game at the weekend as well, is that Liverpool so far have been a bit like the bully who puts the hand on someone's head while they sort of try and swing punches and manage to control teams that way. And Slot even came out himself in pre-season and said that the best method of defence is by keeping hold of the football. So that sort of tells you everything you need to know about how much his style is possession based, about how it's all about controlling the possession, controlling the tempo of the game, using the midfield to do that, which is very different to the midfield under Jurgen Klopp's time, which was more of the engine room for Liverpool. It was more just about being in transition, playing long balls out to the wingers, and really it was what Liverpool had in wide positions that was troubling. Whereas now I think it's much more comes through the middle of the pitch, and Liverpool still have those weapons out wide. It almost just feels like they're a bonus now rather than the be all and end all. So it's been really interesting to see that transition, and Slot's been massively impressive so far. Just in terms of you mentioned about what he's like in press conferences there, and he's just a very cool customer. There doesn't seem to be anything that particularly gets under his skin. I mean, there was a couple of refereeing decisions at the weekend which tested his patience. Definitely, it's the most animated that we've seen him so far, which maybe he will grow into more and more as he becomes Liverpool manager and realises how intense this job is. But so far he's been really cool, calm and composed, and ultimately a perfectionist. And I think that's what we want to see as Liverpool fans. Is we can sometimes criticise players. We'll mostly, I would like to think, praise the players and try to get behind them and be constructive in our criticism. And Slot has very much been on them so far. The expectation level has been high. There's been times where players have made mistakes, and he's not been afraid to publicly talk about those mistakes and talk about how him and the player are working to deal with those. So it's been a really interesting start to the Arne Slot experience. But I think a lot of Liverpool fans, besides the Nottingham Forest game, which is our one black mark on our record so far, we wouldn't really change much about it.
Yeah, that was something I wanted to ask you about in the lead up into our preview, which we'll still touch on a little bit later. With the 1-0 loss against Nottingham Forest, it was also at home in Anfield in Liverpool. How'd you make of that? Like, I mean, I obviously didn't watch the game, but a win is a win against Liverpool in Anfield. That's no easy feat in world football. How did Nottingham Forest, who I think was newly promoted as well, might have been just a couple of seasons in the Premier League, how did they manage to knock that scalp off early?
Yeah, Forest are a couple of seasons into their Premier League experience, but it's been a bit of a strange time for them so far. They came up and spent a lot of money. They basically the reason they got promoted from the Championship was they took a lot of loan deals out, and then a lot of them sort of expired by the time they got to the Premier League. So they had to spend a lot of money and invest a lot in the squad to make sure that they could stay afloat, basically. So that's been a bit of a sort of tricky time for them and for Nottingham Forest fans in general. I'd say they've probably figured it out to an extent now. I think they're roughly around mid-table in the Premier League as things stand, albeit it's quite early in the season. They've got a good young squad full of sort of pace and a good counter-attacking team as well. They finally seem to have landed on a manager who can get the best out of those players as well, which is certainly helping. And that's effectively how they managed to get that scalp at Anfield. To be honest, I think they had the benefit of the fact that Liverpool was still quite new into their experiment. It was the first international break of the season, and coming back from that in a Saturday 3:00. This is not to make any excuses, by the way, because Liverpool shouldn't be losing to Nottingham Forest on any pitch, never mind in Anfield. As you say, Liverpool's record at Anfield is so good, and especially against the sort of lower down teams in the Premier League than Liverpool are. But it was a Saturday 3:00 after the international break. Liverpool are a team who are absolutely filled with internationals and internationals who are very important for their countries as well. So go away and play big minutes. And I think there was a combination of that, a combination of Slot still being quite new into the experiment, adding into that the fact that he'd had quite a consistent 11 till that point. And maybe he underestimated how many changes he'd need to make after the international break. It was interesting, if you watch the Chelsea game of the weekend, he made a couple of changes, and it seemed like he'd sort of learned from that first experience of the international break against Nottingham Forest. And basically Liverpool had all the possession, all the chances in the game, and just allowed Nottingham Forest, too much encouragement in counter-attacking situations. And they'd threatened a couple of times before that, and Liverpool had not really heeded the warning. They'd not made sure that they were trying to be tighter at the back. The manager made a couple of substitutions that I think if he was to have his time again, he maybe wouldn't have made, sort of subbing less experienced players on and players who are more sort of adept in the attacking sense than the defensive sense, like Costa Simicas, the left back, and Conor Bradley, our young right back as well, and trying to sort of change the team around in that way, and it just didn't work. It backfired. As I say, Nottingham Forest threatened a couple of times on the counter attack, and then managed to score a great goal in that one situation, and were able to see the game out from there. So it was a massively frustrating one, and not dissimilar to some games we've seen under Jurgen Klopp in the past, but as I say, very rarely at Anfield, which almost added to the frustration, I think.
What are your expectations of Arne Slot? Has he exceeded his expectations at the moment, or has he gotten to above par expectations currently? Because are you still in the lack of a better terminology, like the honeymoon phase? Like you haven't really seen how well he is as a manager yet, as he's just a bright start of the season, and then could he drop off or anything like that? What are your thoughts on his expectations and so far?
I think he's exceeded expectations so far, in the sense that we all believed there would be a period of transition from Jurgen Klopp, and sort of expected there to be. To be honest, we knew that the squad was good. Jurgen Klopp proved that last season. We knew that he'd sort of started that first stage of the rebuild from the best Liverpool teams that we'd seen under him. That sort of older guard, a lot of them have moved on now, or there's a couple of them who are still around, who are sort of over their peak years. And Klopp had started that first phase of the transition with the squad really, and done a very good job of it. He'd obviously got Dominic Szoboszlai from Leipzig. He'd brought in Alexis McAllister from Brighton as well. So there'd been a couple of big signings that had done really well for Liverpool last season. But we still expected there to be a period of transition, because the new manager coming in, Jurgen Klopp, has been so important to the football club. It's just different messages for the players ultimately. But he's definitely exceeded expectations so far, because he's just hit the ground running so much, and it is at the moment just a bright start. but it's also hard to see how it could tail off so spectacular that Liverpool don't at least comfortably finish top four. Really, I think that's where the expectation now lies as a minimum. But I think most people are expecting Liverpool to be in a title race because they look good enough to be. The manager looks like he's got it all figured out in enough of a way to be. The biggest test really will be this weekend coming up against Arsenal. Not to sort of overlook the Leipzig game, but in terms of the league form for a second, because I think everyone's still sort of figuring out the Champions League format anyway, aren't they? So.
Yeah,
I think expectations and that are sort of up in the air a little bit at the moment, really, as to what we can see from that. But Liverpool have won their first two games, which helps in the Champions League. But in the Premier League, the game against Arsenal at the weekend will be the big one, because that's a title rival effectively. So if Slot can come through that away at Arsenal unscathed, I think you'll see a lot of Liverpool fans being a lot more confident about our chances of going deep into the title race, and I would say there's already a lot of confidence around the place at the moment of that.
Just one last question on Arne Slot. Is he got any different? You said his difference to Jurgen Klopp is his more possession-based football. Has he done anything different with your formations or anything like that, or have you noticed anything on the pitch where during games something might happen? I know that at one stage you used to use a 4-3-3 with a false 9, and you used to have your wingers rotate like swap from both sides. Is these things that we should be expecting on Wednesday night in East Germany, or is there something completely different that Leipzig supporters and fans have never seen before?
It's interesting, really, because Jurgen Klopp came on one of our sort of football analysis shows over here in the UK when he, probably about a year into his managerial career at Liverpool, and he talked about positionless football, basically. So I think the interpretation was always that Jurgen Klopp played a 4-3-3, as you say, but it became very different formations in attacking phases, in transition phases, in defensive phases. It almost became like a 5 at the back when Liverpool were defending, in that the fullbacks would come right back and tuck in as sort of wing backs. Fabinho, who'd have been our sort of primary number 6 at the time, would find himself somewhere between the centre backs sort of shielding there, and he was very much a sort of destroyer type number 6 as well. Albeit he was underrated in the sort of offensive side of the game, Fabinho, but he was just a very prototypical defensive midfielder in that sense. And then when we were attacking, that went to a 3 at the back with Fabinho slotting between the two centre-backs, which was usually sort of probably Virgil van Dijk and Joel Matip would be the biggest appearance makers under Klopp. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Andy Robertson would bomb on, and then, like you say, the sort of the 3 forwards would interchange, in that Roberto Firmino would generally drop deeper, Mo Salah and Sadio Mane would come inside, and then Robertson and Trent would be used to create overloads on the wings. What we're seeing with Slot now is that it's more of a 4-2-3-1. It can look similar in an attacking sense sometimes because it gets close to a 4-3-3, but as I mentioned, that's sort of, if you're basing off the idea that Jurgen Klopp did play a 4-3-3, sometimes it looks much more like a 3-4-3 or something even wilder than that in an attacking sense for Liverpool at times. But Arne Slot sort of falls more into the, Trent still likes to get forward, Robertson still likes to get forward, but Szoboszlai is the one who plays just behind the attacking 3 in the number 10 position. There's a lot of Szoboszlai arriving late into the box and trying to sort of create chances for Liverpool that way and cause overloads more so through the middle. And then Alexi McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch are the ones who are sort of expected to be 6s and 8s simultaneously. 6s when Liverpool are in the defensive phase, and it looks really like a 4-2-3-1 in that sense. But then 8s when it gets into an attacking phase and almost becomes more of a 4-2-4, I guess you'd say, in an attacking sense with the formation, and they're expected to basically keep the opposition hemmed in from there, which they've both done a very good job of this season.
Touching on some players there, the first I will ask is our ex-player Dominik Szoboszlai. I've heard that a lot of Liverpool fans or supporters are not very happy with how he's performing as a number 10. Is that feeling mutual, like with yourself, or am I just reading too much into things over on social media, which can always be sometimes a bit of a non-indication of how things are as well?
Yes, social media is a tricky place at times, but I would say it's probably reflective of the attitude at the moment. I think there's definitely a bit of like a waning patience, I'd say, with Szoboszlai this season, and it's a tricky one really. Like I think Szoboszlai's a great player. I think there's so much to work with in there. He absolutely hit the ground running when he first arrived at Liverpool last season. The first few months of the season, people were talking about him being in Player of the Year contention across the Premier League. We did like a live show in America in the November international break, and I said on stage after a couple of beers, admittedly, but I wouldn't have been surprised if Liverpool continued their trajectory they were on at the time. If Szoboszlai was in Ballon d'Or considerations, like that's how good he was at the start of last season. He got an injury because he played too much football in that first part, and he never quite recovered from the injury last season, and now he's being asked to play a completely different position. It's a really interesting position that he plays in Slot's system, because I think he's probably the player who's asked to work the hardest and do the most. He's the player with the most flexible role, in that his number 10 position can look like a lot like a number 8 when Liverpool are defending, but then he's almost a second striker when Liverpool are attacking. So I've not seen the sort of stats around it, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that he's, at least top 3 in distance covered in every single game he's played so far, so long as he's played the sort of minutes to get to that point. He's being asked to do a lot. I think his off the ball and his defensive work have both been great this season, but that's the bit of the game that's sort of harder to appreciate, I think. And the manager's already come out this season and said that he wants Szoboszlai to post more numbers in terms of goals and assists. I think that was where he left Liverpool fans wanting a little bit last season, was that in that first phase of the season he looked like a player who would get loads of goals and loads of assists. He scored some screamers in that first half of the season, and then never really kept the pressure on that the second half of the season, and he's definitely not done a lot of that this season either, unfortunately. So I would say he's dividing opinion at the moment. We're probably still in the bit where there's a bit of an almost 50-50 split on him, but it's probably edging towards 51% starting to get frustrated and 49% still trying to be constructive about it and get behind the player.
Do you think that he's still going to be there come the end of the January transfer window, or is that something that, like, how much is the frustration? Is it enough that it's critical enough that for him to leave in January, or is it just one of those points where, okay, well, you're now in this new role, give you some time, but it's frustrating that we all know that the great player that he can be, but because he's doing a new role, how much time are we just going to give until it's like, well, he just doesn't fit in?
Definitely the latter, to be honest. Like, we as fans, I think we are the ones who can be irrational ultimately, and some of the frustration I would probably, like, if you sat some of the fans who are most frustrated down in a room with Arne Slot, I think it would come out in the wash that a lot of the frustrations are quite irrational because of, as I say, the amount of work that Slot is asking him to get through. So I don't think there's any question mark about his future, to be honest. He's still a young player. He's still relatively new at the club. He's only been here for not even a year and a half at this stage. I think the frustration basically is, like you say, that the potential is clearly there, and there's elements of a player there that we've all sort of built our idea around, and at the moment what we're seeing from him and what he's being asked to do are both rubbing up against that, and that's probably where the frustration is a little bit in terms of what he's been asked to do, and that's where the people like me who are probably more sympathetic towards him are finding the frustration with that, and just that it's not quite clicking for him so far, and then some people who are frustrated with the player personally because they feel like he could be doing more, and I think the manager would find himself probably between the two, but would also come out and praise his defensive and off the ball work, which, as I say, is the bit that we as fans probably find it harder to interpret, really, because it doesn't necessarily show up on the eye test all the time. It doesn't necessarily show up in the numbers either, unless you start to dig into the more advanced stuff. So I think there's absolutely no question about his future. If he wasn't here at the end of the January transfer window, I'd be very, very surprised. If he wasn't here at the end of the summer, I'd be very, very surprised. I still think his long-term future is here at Liverpool. I just hope that he can, even for his sake, to be honest, like his own confidence and his own trajectory, I hope that he can start to find some form soon.
Will we see Dominic start against us on Wednesday night?
I would be very surprised if he doesn't, but only really because the options aren't necessarily there for him not to at the moment. If Liverpool were not to start Szoboszlai, it would look like suddenly Liverpool have made a lot of changes, particularly to that sort of idea of a starting formation. Harvey Elliott's injured at the moment, who's our other sort of shoe-in number 10. Federico Chiesa is injured too, and he's probably one of the more versatile players who could play in that position, and that leaves Liverpool basically with our next number 10 option in terms of a natural number 10 being a 17-year-old kid in Trey Ione. So I would be very surprised if he was getting a game in the Champions League against a team who are very adept to this level as well in RB Leipzig. I think if he wasn't to start, we'd probably see Liverpool with two attackers, which again, like going away to Leipzig, would feel very attacking. So I think you will see Szoboszlai starting this one.
There was a couple of players that I wanted to ask about before I go a little bit more forward into the episode here. With Trent Alexander-Arnold, he was always known as a overlapping fullback who's able to beautiful crosser of the ball and fantastic passer of the ball as well. He's not really doing any of those outputs anymore. He's really gone into a really, really good defensive right back. And what's your take on that? Like, for me, was it something that he didn't know that he could have or anything like that? Because for me, it sort of just came out of the blue, just how he's been utilised under new manager Arne Slot.
Yeah, the evolution of Trent is just fascinating in general, to be honest. In that, like, you're right to say that he was the overlapping fullback when he first came into Jurgen Klopp's system. As I mentioned before, the fullbacks were the ones who were expected to create the width in Liverpool's system and create those overloads down the wings, which meant that basically Salah and Mane could operate somewhere between opposition fullbacks and either side, left and right centre halves. Then it started to adapt over the last couple of years under Jurgen Klopp, where Trent became almost the quarterback for Liverpool. You'd see a lot of Trent inverting into a number 6 position and coming into that midfield, and that's where he was when he played at academy level for Liverpool. So it's not sort of wholly out of the picture for us or out of the blue that Trent can play midfield. Like, anyone who saw Trent play at academy level would have seen him, effectively being a number 10 in the academy. He was a number 8 really, but again, it was almost that Szoboszlai number 8 where you're expected to do a lot of doggy work, sort of tracking back and making tackles, but then arriving late into the box, scoring goals. And he was the captain of those youth sides when he was coming through as well. So he was starting to adapt towards that, and it was an experiment which had its ups and downs really, and probably more ups and downs than Trent deserved there to be, because his quality is so good, and I think he was so underrated as a fullback when he was an overlapping fullback, because he had to get through so much work basically, that when we decided to make him more of a 6, he was completely undermined at times, really left too exposed, because he was expected to simultaneously be in the centre but then also be stopping the winger who would be coming down his side, and that's where teams would often try and exploit, because there just weren't really many other gaps in Liverpool's defence to exploit besides that right hand side between whoever the right centre back was, which is obviously less consistent than Virgil van Dijk being the starting left centre back for the best part of 6-7 years now, and Andy Robertson being the sort of more well-known defensive fullback, if you will, of the two. But this season, like you say, he's become a more conventional fullback. I think it suits him because he can still do that overlapping fullback stuff. I think he learnt a lot from that sort of midfield experiment that Liverpool tried, where you'll see that in assuming that he does start this game, and I would imagine that he does. You'll see that in his passing range now, the way that he will sort of almost step into close to a midfield role and just spray a ball 50-60 yards to Luis Diaz on the left wing to give Liverpool an out ball. That's where you'll see those more midfield and as I say, that quarterback, if you want to call it that, qualities of Trent. But the key thing is with Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's just so much talent there. I believe he's the most talented fullback in world football. I believe he's one of the most talented footballers in the world as well. I think that's how good he is. So really, anywhere you play him, he can do a job and can show his talents off. I think the key thing this season is that he doesn't feel like he's being as exposed by Slot and his system, and is able to get through a bit more of that defensive work with less of a microscope on him and a bit more sort of composure.
Just one more question as well. Just before I do ask that question on players, Mo Salah, did he go through the Chelsea game unscathed? I know he scored a penalty. He's expected to fly over to Germany on Wednesday night. Yeah,
so Salah is maybe the one who Liverpool would look at and argue if he needs a rest or not. He didn't play the second game for Egypt in the international break, so I'd imagine they'd probably fall close to the side of not. And Slot has gone, relatively strong in the Champions League so far. I think if you were to ask Liverpool fans, he'd probably be the one who would be trying to get some rest for, just because of how important he is. But he did come through the Chelsea game unscathed. I think he may have even I don't know if he even got subbed off in the end. I can maybe look at this live as we're sort of going through it, but there was definitely not an injury there, and he's been so crucial to Liverpool this season as well. He has been for years, to be honest. But he plays the full 90 at the weekend, so it may be one of them that Slot is sort of looking towards and maybe thinking he can get some sort of rest for him, because Liverpool do have options across the front three. We have guys that can play anywhere across that. We've seen, Jota came off with an injury at the weekend, which may be the thing that undermines any potential rest for Mo Salah, because he won't want to risk Jota even if there is a chance that he can make this game. But usually Jota can play on the right, Gakpo is capable of playing on the right, Diaz is capable of playing on the right, and then there's a lot of options off the left. Basically everybody besides Mo Salah can play off the left hand side, and then we've got Nunez and Jota and Gakpo who can all play through the middle. So it's a real versatile bunch in the front three. But I would imagine that given the sort of limited options at Slot's disposal at the moment, that we'll see Mo Salah start in this one.
What can you tell me about your new or backup goalkeeper? I'm probably going to butcher the first name. Kalmahin Kelleher?
Yeah. So right? it's Quavine. So it's a tough one because it's an Irish pronunciation. So it's like real Gaelic Irish basically. But Kelleher's brilliant. He is, I would say, the best backup goalkeeper in the Premier League, and has proven to be so over the last couple of seasons. He's unfortunately had to step up quite a lot, which is obviously good for him because he gets the opportunity, but the reason he's had to step up quite a lot is that our primary keeper, Alisson Becker, has suffered from a couple of injuries in recent seasons, and Alisson is probably, I would argue, the best goalkeeper in world football. I think he's a real complete goalkeeper in the sense that he's so good with his feet, his reflexes are unbelievable, his presence, whenever strikers are one-on-one with him, it's not a given that those strikers are going to score, because he's just such a huge presence, and his stature is, literally in terms of physical stature is so large as well. So it's a blow to miss Alisson. But Kelleher's a more than capable backup. He's the starting goalkeeper for the Republic of Ireland. There was several Premier League teams who were after him in the summer, and the move just never quite materialised. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were more Premier League clubs that come in for him in the summer, given some of the performances he's put in already so far this season, and the fact that Liverpool have already signed Mamardashvili from Valencia, and he will arrive from his sort of extended loan spell in the summer. So his long-term future is not a Liverpool Kelleher, but from what he's shown of us so far, he's been absolutely brilliant, and there'll be no sort of question marks in Liverpool fans' minds about him and his abilities going into this game.
Yeah, so with this podcast, I do something called Player Watch. It doesn't always necessarily mean like the best player. He was the one that I picked out, besides a notable mention for Mo Salah, as he scored twice in our previous fixtures in the Champions League in 2020-2021 season. So I was really intrigued to see just how well he's going to be, because as a backup goalkeeper, even like you have to be good quality. For instance, we've got Belgian under-21 international Martin van der Voort. He hasn't been able to play any games yet, which I'm a little bit critical of, but Peter Galacci has been absolutely fantastic. And with the big clubs around the world, especially someone like Liverpool, you need to have a really, really good goalkeeper, even just as a backup goalkeeper. And there's no knock on him, so I'm very interested to see how he plays. Who are your personal favourites at Liverpool?
Mo Salah is always someone who will have a place in my heart. I think he's one of the best footballers I've seen play for Liverpool. I'd probably have him top three, alongside Steven Gerrard and Luis Suarez. I think he is that good. He's a world class talent and continues to be so. It always feels like with these ones it's a tough one, because like favourite is different to best, isn't it? But the best ones sort of have been my favourites because they're the ones who've delivered us the trophies. So I'd put Virgil van Dijk in that category as well. He's the captain of the club now. He's a leader who leads in a sort of very vocal sense, but also leads by example so much as well. The way that he marshals Liverpool's defensive line. He's just a unique talent. I don't think there is a better centre half in world football, and I think it'll be a while before we see a better one in the Premier League. I think he goes straight up into the pantheon of Premier League greats. He is just unbelievable. So they are the two that I would say have delivered me the most great memories in my life as a Liverpool fan in terms of those trophy wins. So they're the ones who I probably have the softest spot for at the moment. But I have a lot of love for Dominic Szoboszlai too, to be honest. That's probably why I've been more sympathetic towards him than some other fans have been. But that feels like a more controversial favourite to have at the moment.
What's your most favourable moment you've had as a supporter of Liverpool? You mentioned those trophies. Was there any specific trophies or any other specific moments that you highlight as, one of your best moments of being a supporter of Liverpool?
Yeah, so I'm lucky enough that, because I go to a lot of games, I've been able to travel and watch Liverpool all over Europe, which is just when I was a kid, when I eventually became a huge football fan as a kid, that was just my dream to be able to follow Liverpool on the continent, to go to historic European stadiums and see Liverpool win. And I've seen Liverpool lift trophies live in person, countless trophies live in person now, so I do feel very lucky in that sense. But the best memory for me is one that's close to home. It was a game at Anfield where Liverpool were 3-0 down on aggregate against Barcelona, and came back to win 4-3. I've just never seen anything like that in a football match in my life. I was lucky enough to be alongside my dad that night, who is the reason that I'm a Liverpool fan, as I said at the start. So that was just special for me to be with the person who made you a Liverpool fan, and then to see one of Liverpool's greatest ever comebacks, probably Liverpool's greatest ever comeback, full stop, to be honest. It's definitely top 3 if it's not sort of top 1. So that was just an incredible night, one of Liverpool's most historic Champions League nights. The game that set up Liverpool being able to go and lift the trophy in Madrid, which again I was lucky enough to be there to witness with my own eyes. So it's been an unbelievable journey following Liverpool, and I do feel sort of very grateful that I've had so many of those good experiences. But fitting, really, I think that the best one happened right on my doorstep.
Have you attended any games against RB Leipzig?
I haven't. So there's been, I think Liverpool played 3 games in recent years against RB Leipzig. One was a pre-season friendly, which I do know some people who went to. But then the other 2, I was looking this up the other day actually when you first sent the question through, because I was like, I wonder if they were behind closed doors, because I definitely don't remember going to them.
I think they were, yeah.
They were, and they were both in Budapest, which I was intrigued by, because I remember I watched a couple of the highlights from what was meant to be the sort of home leg in inverted commas, and I was like, that doesn't look like Anfield. And then I realised that both of the games had been played in Budapest. I can't really remember why that was at the time. I wonder if it was a sort of COVID restrictions thing that meant that they just picked a neutral venue for both of those games to be played at. But no, this will be the first time that I get to see Liverpool play against RB. Well, I'm not going, so not in person, but the first time with a proper crowd and a competitive game.
So this is one of the questions that I absolutely love telling, or I should say asking all my guests. It varies depending on the type of supporter that comes onto the show. You can imagine what it would be like with Bundesliga supporters that are willing to come onto an RB Leipzig podcast. So the question is, how do you feel about us, meaning the club, and be honest?
I again, the English football is just not particularly tainted by the Red Bull experience by any stretch of the imagination, and to be honest, Liverpool have had quite a good relationship with the Red Bull clubs down the years, whether that be Salzburg, whether that be Leipzig. So my opinion of RB Leipzig is probably not as bad as some Bundesliga fans would be, because, as I say, we sort of feel like we've got bigger fish to fry with the oil state clubs that we have in the Premier League, and they feel like the true enemies of football to us. I understand and sort of sympathise with the view that some Bundesliga fans have about the Red Bull project, particularly because of the rules around ownership and things like that are in the Bundesliga. I can totally understand and, as I say, sympathise with those views. But for me, I probably end up just judging it more on Leipzig as a club, and I think that they've run that project really well. I think there's been some great players who've come through that system in the past few years, and of course Liverpool have been the beneficiaries of that on a couple of occasions now. Albeit we probably wouldn't thank you too much for Naby Keita. He may be the one who's the sort of most disappointing one from our side in terms of the expectations that he came with and ultimately what he delivered. But Ibrahima Konate, Dominic Szoboszlai, they are players that we would definitely be thanking Leipzig for, and thankful that we have that sort of relationship with Leipzig and with the Red Bull project in general to be able to benefit off that. So yeah, I wouldn't say my opinions are particularly strong. Definitely not as strong as Mainz and Dortmund fans at the moment, anyway.
Yeah, Naby Keita is very unlucky. He's at SV Werder Bremen now, back in the Bundesliga, but he's just gone downhill ever since the move away from RB Leipzig. Like, I don't know what's happened to him. He's great footballer, don't get me wrong, but he's just, the expectations were so high. He failed to get to those, especially with the move with Liverpool, like you said. And then ever since then, it's just dropped off the face of the earth. Basically, he's still, I think, early 30s. He's still got some time left, but yeah, I think most people don't want to touch him. I even said as a general question for supporters and fans of RB Leipzig on social media, would you take Naby Keita back? And it was a strong no.
Yeah, so, I think it is a tricky one, like you say, because I think that was it's very hard to play in Liverpool's midfield. I mentioned before that it went from being a group of water carriers under Jurgen Klopp, and even now under Slot, where the sort of pressure on the midfielders is now just to be better on the ball. This would actually probably be a system which would suit Naby Keita more, but I still think, and that's me sort of thinking of prime Naby Keita rather than the one that's playing for Werder Bremen at the moment, like you say. But his body just failed him ultimately, and I think part of that was that some of it is luck. In terms of just having terrible luck, bad injuries at bad times when he was probably just building up a head of steam for Liverpool and never just quite got to get that rhythm. But I think part of it is just that the demand for Liverpool was just too great for him, and the strain of his body, and he was so important for his country as well. I can remember times where Guinea was still calling him up when there were injury concerns around him and just playing him in games on not very great surfaces in Africa against other African teams who it was at that time where Liverpool probably wanted him to be protected a little bit more so that we could be the beneficiaries of him over a longer period of time. But as I say, I think the demands from club and country really were just too great on Naby, and ultimately it meant that we didn't get to see the player that we thought we were getting from Leipzig, because there was so much excitement around when we got him. He was the first player to wear the number 8 shirt after Steven Gerrard, which is no small feat in our minds. So it is a shame, and it's a shame to see the way his career has gone. But I imagine his career would have gone a different direction if he'd have gone to a team that weren't so sort of effervescent in terms of pressing, that didn't demand so much of players on the ball and things like that. I think that basically that he wasn't ready to meet the expectation level that came at Liverpool.
Previewing our upcoming game now, and both teams are doing very, very well in their respective leagues. So you guys are top. Both teams with the best defensive record in both domestic divisions. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I do believe you are the best defence in the Premier League as of recording.
Yep.
And we are also the same. The only reason why we are second to Bayern Munich is because of goal differential, as they just seem to be popping in goals left, right and centre. So what is expected from your team coming into this, and what do you expect from us coming into this match?
Liverpool fans will have high expectations for this game. As you say, we are the best defence in the league. We've only conceded 3 goals in the league this season through 8 games, which is a far better record. In fact, I'm just looking at now, and Nottingham Forest have the second best defence in the Premier League behind us. They've only conceded 6 goals, so that sort of tells you, as I mentioned before, that they've started to figure things out a little bit this season. But the expectations will be higher from Liverpool fans, and I think in terms of Leipzig, we'll be expecting attacking football, which I think suits us, because it suits Liverpool more when teams try and come on to Liverpool a bit more. I know that Leipzig have had teams that are particularly good in the counter attack, and that may be where Leipzig can get their success with Liverpool if they can catch them out in that sense. But generally, Liverpool have not allowed teams to create many chances this season. In fact, whenever teams have created chances, it's generally been more down to the fact that Liverpool have sort of made mistakes in defensive areas, particularly on ball mistakes or unforced errors and things like that. So if Leipzig are going to be high pressing and things like that, that might be where they can catch Liverpool out, and then, as I say, create counter attacking moves. But I think Liverpool fans would be having big expectations going into this one, and be expecting Liverpool to win, such as has been our run of form so far this season.
Yeah, your run of form is absolutely fantastic, not just domestically, but also in the Champions League itself. You beat, well, I think it was Milan 3-1,
Yeah.
and you managed to beat Bologna as well. I think that was 2-0. Like, you guys are absolutely on a roll. It's going to be really tough on Wednesday night in Leipzig to be able to stop you guys, that's for sure. But do you think there's going to be any things from a Leipzig perspective, or I should say from a Liverpool perspective from Leipzig? Are you expecting anything different, or like what is your expected formation, style of play? You said counter-attacking. We will be most likely doing a lot of counter-attacking football. Most likely we'll be going all out. I can't see why Marco Rosa won't. So we'll probably be starting our best 11 absolutely possible. So that means Xavi Simons will be up there with Benjamin Sesko and Luis Openda. The three amigos, you could also say, they're great players. So what is your expectation from a lineup perspective? Like, who are you most worried about on the Leipzig side?
I wouldn't say I've seen enough of Leipzig to be completely honest with you to be too worried about any of their players. I've heard of all three of those players that you've referenced there, and so that sort of suggests that they are, you know, massive talents that are known across European football, because I just don't get a chance to watch much Bundesliga football. It's not particularly accessible in the UK, or at least not sort of in my eye line. So Xavi Simons would be the one who I've sort of heard of the most in terms of his talents and things like that. So he'd be the one that I'd be most cautious of if I was Liverpool. But besides that, I think Liverpool just have enough to be able to deal with Leipzig in this game, and to be able to go on and as I say, have that sort of expectation of getting a win. And it's no disrespect to Leipzig at all. It's just more of a nod to, as you referenced before, how good our form's been, how good I think that we are as a team. The fact that we don't let teams create many chances. We've got so much attacking talent as well, and even though there are a couple of injuries in those attacking ranks with Harvey Elliott and Diogo Jota, who Harvey Elliott is definitely not back, but Diogo Jota we expect will probably be left out of this game, even if he is healthy enough to, because of his injury concern at the weekend. I still think Liverpool would just have too much in an attacking sense for Leipzig to be able to deal with.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I honestly don't see us being able to beat you guys, and if we do, very easily. For me, I said the most likelihood is going to be, like, as in best result for us, is a 2-2 draw. I do think, however, there's going to be goals, and I don't think it's going to be a 2-2 draw. I think it's going to be a 3-2 win for Liverpool. And that's just literally, at the end of the day, I think your class is just going to have that extra edge over the younger, more less experienced players in this format from RB Leipzig. That's taking nothing away from us. We absolutely can win. I just don't see us winning it's very, very hard, basically. It's like when we came up against Real Madrid, we should have won those games last season. But I didn't see us very hard. Like, it was very hard for me to foresee us being able to beat them, especially over there at the Santiago Bernabeu. So teams like Liverpool, as even if they're away, you've just got so much quality all over the pitch. Just having a look at it here, you've got it's a possible prediction lineup. You've got Nunes, Szoboszlai, Gravenbach, Diaz, Salah. They're all attacking players. You've got good defenders, ex-player Ibrahim Konate, Virgil van Dijk, Alexander Arnold. It says Robinson as well. I don't know if he's back at Liverpool. The last time I knew he wasn't. Okay, yep. I just wanted to make sure this was correct. So nothing like saying no, he hasn't played for us in like 5 years. I honestly think that we've got an uphill battle for us, and I hope that we win, but unfortunately I don't see that happening. Just going to finish up now. Tell the listeners where they can find you, or anything you'd like to plug.
So my social media personally, you can get me jsexton24 on Twitter, the Anfield Wrap podcast. You can find our free podcasts on any of your podcast platforms. Just search for the Anfield Wrap and you'll be able to listen to our free shows there. We do have a subscription service, but I can't imagine there'll be many Leipzig fans who are wanting to get too much into the depths of what Liverpool are up to. But of course, if you do want to listen to any of our shows, then you can download the Anfield Wrap app and listen to our podcasts and videos, and you get a bit of a free trial with with that as well. So you'll get some tokens to use to find them. But you can find the Anfield Wrap at the Anfield Wrap on any social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your social media goodness, you'll be able to find people like me talking about Liverpool, people much better than me, to be honest, talking about Liverpool, and yeah, just enjoying the sort of sharing that experience of supporting Liverpool Football Club. And we're lucky enough to be able to do it from the heart of Liverpool city centre as well, just a stone's throw away from Anfield. So yeah, we're very proud of what we've been able to build here.
Just one last thing before I let you go. I always have a surprise question. It's now not a surprise. Everyone now knows what this is. Originally, we had about 45 minutes one time just to try to figure out what it would be. So now I send it pre-advance before I get my guests. What's one question you wished I'd have asked you, and how would you have responded?
So it's funny because when you first sent through these questions, I was thinking about this one, and you hadn't written anything into the agenda at the time about the Jurgen Klopp Red Bull thing, so I was going to use that. But then you mentioned a name before, which is interesting because I don't know if many Leipzig fans know that Peter Galacci used to play for Liverpool. So he came through Liverpool's. Well, he didn't come to Liverpool's academy. We signed him from a Hungarian team, but he was at Liverpool's academy for a couple of years. So I think I'd have probably. My sort of funnier question would have been, what was Peter Galacci like during his time at Liverpool? And I wouldn't have been able to answer it in any sort of great depth. I basically remember him being a very tall figure, but more sort of on the slender side. So he looked like a goalkeeper from your Sunday League team compared to the giant that he is now. But I think Liverpool fans are all so pleased to see that he's gone on and had a great career in European football, because that it does make you feel proud as a Liverpool fan, even when it's someone like Galacci who didn't spend a great deal of years here, didn't play. I don't know if he played at all for Liverpool's first team, or if he did, it was a very sort of minimum handful of appearances. But it's pleasing to us that he's gone on and had a great career at Leipzig.
Yeah, I think a lot of RBL Leipzig supporters probably don't remember that one. If I remember correctly, it was actually roughly when the club was founded in 2009, I think. Peter Galacci was actually around there down at Liverpool. So thank you very much, Josh. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Justin. I appreciate you having me.
And if you want to see more guest videos like this one, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, turn notifications on, and smash that like button. I've been Justin Crozer. Until next time, bye-bye for now.